Okay. Now I am live on YouTube and I am live on TikTok. We're going to be reading the chapter, starting at chapter 16 through chapter 19, and then tomorrow night I'll read the last 4 chapters. So I've been going live at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm a little late this evening because I needed to make dinner and do all of that fun stuff for my kids. The book in total is, I think, 234 pages. That includes like the acknowledgments and all that stuff and the resources and that sort of thing. Oh, hold on. I gotta turn this TV down. Okay. So if you are new to my page, I have been covering a lot of Gypsy Rose content. I have also been covering content in regards to narcissistic abuse, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, recovery, business, entrepreneurship. I cover a lot of things. Here lately, it's been mostly narcissistic abuse and Gypsy Rose. So if those topics interest you, definitely give me a follow. Make sure that you are liking and double tapping the screen so that it sends my video out into the algorithm as good content. Whew. I hope everybody had a good day. All right, I just need to set myself up so that we can get started. I'm not in my pajamas this evening because I went to work today, so I'm in my work clothes and I'm still covered in dirty dog water and sweat and dog hair. I'll take a shower whenever I'm done. So we read the chapters where she talked about Nick and a couple of other things. And while I was at work today, I was thinking about why didn't they put this book like somewhat in chronological order, because it feels like it's jumping back and forth a lot, which is a little confusing. As a reader, it's confusing because it's like talking about this particular time in life and then it takes us, into the past, into other things. So for me, it's a little confusing, and I wish that the writers would have done a little bit of a better job staying on topic and in chronological order so that it kind of helped us to read it a little bit better with a little bit better of a flow. But honestly, I think that they may have done it this way in order to confuse the reader, and we all know why they would want to confuse the reader, and in order for us to not be able to see those inconsistencies very clearly, because we're having to shift back and forth from chapter to chapter in order to see those inconsistencies. So I think if they had done a more cohesive writing, the inconsistencies would have been easier for us to point out. So that's probably why they didn't do it like that. But as I stated last night, I think that her team might be trying to slowly sabotage her, because there's a lot of inconsistencies within the book that the writers should have known about her saying in the documentaries. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start reading County Jail, which is chapter number 16. And if you guys have any questions, or if you see something or hear something that I'm saying and you want to chime in, go ahead and put it in the chat. and we'll get the discussion going. Right? You agree. Yeah, everybody's agreeing with that. By the time I asked for a lawyer, Nick and I had already been charged with the exact same crime, first degree murder, with armed criminal action, and were moved to Waukesha County Jail. It didn't matter whose hand held the knife or whose impulse it was to try to cut a dead woman's head off. The police, did you hear that? She said it didn't matter whose hand held the knife or whose impulse it was to try to cut a dead woman's head off. Is this an admission that Dee Dee was already unalive by the time that Nick got there? Because how would you cut a dead person's head off if they were alive while it happened? Does that make sense? Thank you, Alice. So, just things to think about. Pay attention to these little small details, right? Yes, Nicola. She actually said that it didn't matter whose hand held the knife or whose impulse it was to cut a dead woman's head off. Now, I don't know if this is some sort of an admission of hers or if she's trying to, again, quietly admit that she took part in this. But she's saying that, yeah, that basically her and Nicholas were charged with the exact same crime, and it didn't matter that he was the one who had the weapon or whatever. That's basically what she's trying to say, but in a backhanded way, it sounds like she's admitting. We all know she went into the room. Oh, Buffy, thank you. I just got on a few minutes ago because I was cooking dinner and that kind of stuff. I made chicken stir fry. Okay, well, we're gonna see. To me, it already sounds like a confession back to Bushwick. It sounds like it. Oh, thank you, Alice. He's over here. He's trying to like get my attention so that I can throw the ball to him, but I'm not gonna do that right now because I'm trying to read. So he can wait. Mm, yes, I did see that picture. I did. I'll have to take a better look at it, but I did see that picture. Okay. The police didn't see a distinction between Nick and me. Outside of Nick's house, sitting on the police car, I was read my Miranda rights. So how were you read your Miranda rights but didn't think you were under arrest? She says, she said, I was never read my Miranda rights. So I hadn't thought I was under arrest. Okay. If I had watched detective shows instead of the Disney Channel, maybe I would have known to lawyer up, but I'm glad I didn't. I needed what happened to next to happen. It turned out that my little nest egg of $4,000 wasn't enough to retain an OJ dream team. So I was assigned a public defender who would see me through an arraignment until I would be extradited to Missouri, where I would begin to defend my case. During those 3 days in county, I didn't know who to call for help other than Nick. Who else do I have in this world other than him? I didn't have any phone numbers. The only number I knew was my own, and nobody was there. I was completely unaware of the sensation our arrest was making on national news, which is how my Aunt Celeste and pretty much every estranged family member found out. Celeste is my dad's younger sister, who I vaguely remember, but I jumped at the chance to call her after she contacted my public defender with her phone number. So my one phone call was to Aunt Celeste. This whole idea of one phone call is bullshit. You can make as many calls as you need while you're in the county jail. You don't just get one. Like, you can call as many people as you need to call to get help. Yeah, right? The whole OJ thing. I think that she wanted to write this book in the same way that OJ wanted to write the book, If I Did It, or whatever it was. Picking up the receiver to dial her number, my stomach was a battleground where hope and dread duked it out. I dreaded the awkwardness of being vulnerable. Kimber, leave it. Lay down. I dreaded the awkwardness of being vulnerable to a stranger, but I held tightly to hope that she would be able to guide me, to help me. I know you really don't know me, I said, leaning against the sticky beige wall of the jail, but I'm in a lot of trouble. Gypsy, do you know your dad's number? Celeste's voice was shaky but kind. I wished I could have trusted her completely, but I wasn't sure if she had an ulterior motive for reaching out. My mother had told me so many shitty things about every single one of my family members. I found it impossible to consider that Celeste could be genuinely concerned for a niece who was a perfect stranger. I tried to be gracious when she gave me my dad's number, but I kept her at arm's length. The next phone call you get to make, Celeste said, call your dad. As I waited for permission to make another call, I imagined all the ways the conversation between my dad and me could go. I had no connection to him. We didn't know each other. He was an acquaintance at best. Parents and children don't need words to know what's going on inside. Their shared experience is a language that transcends words. That wasn't the case for me and my dad. He didn't know me well enough to know my proclivities, to gauge my mental or emotional state. Again, dread and hope returned in their circular duel as I picked up the phone and dialed my father. Would he be home? Was he waiting for my call? Did he even know that Celeste told me to call him? What if he's angry at me? What if he hates me? After all this time, why would he help me now? Hello, he said, as if it were a question. I didn't let him get a word in. My rambling took up all the space on the phone line, so I could postpone hearing his response, his rejection. Daddy, I said, I'm innocent. I didn't do it. Don't believe what's on the TV because I would never hurt Mama, and I'm really scared. And I know we haven't had a chance to really talk alone all these years, but I don't know what to do. Up to this point, my dad and I never had a private phone call, nor a phone conversation that went beyond the superficial small talk that acquaintances do about the weather or football. This was the first time I spoke to him without my mother hovering and feeding me lines, telling me what to say or how to say it, and this was no small talk. Dad was so unbelievably calm. His voice was steady. I found myself wishing I could surrender to his lead, not the way a submissive does, but the way a little girl feels safe doing so around her daddy. For her to even put that in there is fucking weird. Like, why would you even make a comparison about being a submissive and your dad in the same sentence? That's a sexual thing. I don't get it. That's just weird. It's okay. Don't worry, Dad said in his buttery Cajun accent. Just hang tight and we'll get you through this. I so desperately wished I could trust him. What's wrong with me? My dad's job as a trawler requires him to remain calm when the seas try to swallow a crew whole. Even though he was grappling with his own shock, confusion, and anger about the scam that defined his life, My dad planted his feet behind the captain's wheel, navigating me the way he never was allowed to when Mama was around. We said our goodbyes, and soon I'd see him in Missouri when we could begin working with my Missouri appointed public defender, Mike Stanfield. While I waited to be transported to Missouri, I was still in the phase where I believed Nick loved me and I loved him. We would accidentally pass each other in the county jail with our attorneys shielding us from making eye contact. I was angry and sad because I felt betrayed by his interrogation video. Why would she say that now? How would she have felt betrayed in the moment when she didn't know what he had said? You know what I'm saying? Like, she didn't see those interrogation videos in jail. They don't show you that in jail. So she wouldn't have seen that until later on. So her feeling betrayed would have had to have been feeling betrayed for another reason. You're right, Gwen. She does. She thinks about sex all the time. It's weird. And yes, there are pictures of her and Rod together looking very happy and excited to spend time with one another. So for me, it's odd for her to say that they were like complete strangers because clearly they were not complete strangers. While I waited to be transported to Missouri, I was still in the phase where I believed Nick loved me and I loved him. We would accidentally pass each other in the county jail with our attorneys shielding us from making eye contact. I was angry and sad because I felt betrayed by his interrogation video. I really thought he would never sell me out. But even though I was hurt, I still couldn't help worrying about what was going to happen. This makes so much sense now. This little part right here explains exactly why in every single interview she talks about how she hates Nick and how she wished she could have met a real man, this, that, and the other, because she thought that she had did a good enough job manipulating him that he would never tell on her, that he would take the fall and she would not be in any trouble at all. That's what she thought. She thought that she had did such a good job getting into his mind that he would never betray her. That's why she's so angry now. That's why she's so upset. That's why at every single opportunity she throws him under the bus because she's mad at him. Yeah, she's mad that he told the truth and that he didn't take the entire fall. It makes so much sense. So much sense. What a bitch. Like, you're mad at him and he literally unalived your mother for you and you're mad at him. Like, you have the audacity to be upset with this kid because he told the truth when you literally got 8 years and he got life and you're still mad. Like, that is selfish. That is selfish as fuck. Yeah, I definitely think that she did the rest. She absolutely did. And then I'm sure she even got more upset when she realized that he was like dating other girls in prison because she feels like he's property to her and he should not be with anyone else but her because he's her property. That's how they had like their connection or whatever. He is still protecting her. He won't forever. Yep. Same thing with Ryan. That's how narcissists are. She says, we wrote to each other through a metal grate in the wall in the recreation room. In the mornings, the women used the rec room, and in the afternoon, the men occupied it. And we would leave letters for each other to find behind the gate. Nick said, I need for you to be brave. I'm sorry you are going through this, I wrote back. In one letter, he quoted Ephesians 5, which he translated as something like, wives are supposed to be submissive to their husbands. With all that going on, he still wanted to play games. I don't believe that at all. Why would he quote the Bible? He's never made, I mean, maybe he would because he was a Christian, but he's never mentioned the Bible any other time, so why would he quote it to her? And she's a sadist. Like, I think the reason why he is so loyal to her and why others are so loyal to her is because the way that she manipulates people, she makes them feel like she needs their protection in the same way that she has manipulated Bree. Bree thinks that she is protecting GYPSY by doing all the bullshit that she's doing. And that's how she gets them to the manipulation and how it works. It's a damsel in distress. You're protecting me. You're, my best friend, and I need you to help save me. I have nobody else in the world. You're the only person I can trust, that kind of thing. Yeah, definitely the white knight syndrome. She picks people who have low self-esteem, and she picks people who have low self-esteem, zero confidence, and are naive and gullible. I mean, let's just be real. Yeah, people who are easily manipulated. Love is patient and kind, not dominant or submissive. I don't recall the Bible saying love is deviant and humiliating. But before the crime, I mistook these behaviors for attention, and any attention at all made me feel seen and beautiful. Being submissive was also familiar. My mother had wanted an infant. Nick wanted a slave. Both required them dominating me and me letting them. I don't think that Dee Dee wanted her to be an infant. And now looking back at some of those videos where you see them together, I think it was GYPSY's idea to do this scam. I don't think it was Dee Dee's. I think it was GYPSY's. And I believe that they both knew that if either of them told on one another, that they both end up in prison for this fraud. And they were both hanging it over each other's head for years. I tried to hang on to what I thought was a bond of forever love and deep intimacy. We'd leave etchings on the wall. MPG loves GRB. My first letter was an apology for getting him into this mess. I was still thinking he loved me enough to save me from what had been going on, and I wanted him to know that I knew what he sacrificed for me. That van that transported me from Wisconsin back to Missouri had seats made of plastic shaped in the opposite form of your butt. Hold on, I think I skipped a page. It was like sitting on a clamshell for 2 days. My hands were handcuffed behind my back and my feet shackled as I fidgeted my tailbone around, failing to find a place to fit in the curve of the seat. Two men who were being dropped in St. Paul, Minnesota, also cuffed and shackled, sat directly across from me, as if we were in an elevator together. I tried to look anywhere around the van but at them. Girl, one of the men said, you're all over the news. You're going to death row. I bet that scared the ever living shit out of her, hearing that she was going to go to death row. And I think that hearing somebody tell her that was probably her her light bulb moment, like, I got to figure out a way to get out of this shit. I don't know. He doesn't. That's a really good question. Hold on. I don't know how he signed his messages before, but the way that he signs his messages now is Nicholas, in parentheses, Mr. Smiley, go to John. So he doesn't write MPG. You could be right about that. She did get off way too easy. But her karma is coming. I promise. Y'all just wait. It's coming. And when it comes, you are going to be like, finally. It's going to be like one of those moments. I promise. Nothing lasts forever. This was my first glimpse of the public attention my case would attract. Even prisoners without access to television knew about Nick and me. They were having a good time fucking with me, going on and on about my fate, watching me freak out. After the van dropped them in St. Paul, we stopped at McDonald's where I ate biscuits and gravy for the first time. I only remembered eating biscuits with Claude, but we always had butter. So even on this cold, rainy, damp drive of doom, I experienced something deliciously new. For Southerners, biscuits and gravy represent the simple life, sweet and salty. I'm glad I savored this taste because that was as good as it was going to get for a very long time. Lisa, not the biscuits and gravy. Could this be the story of the biscuits and gravy? Hey Susie. Oh, when it happens, we're all going to be celebrating. I'm telling you, it's going to be like a finally, and it's going to be so big that she's never going to be able to escape her karma. I promise. Okay. Chapter 17, the title is in French. Comment on fait son lit on s'est couché. You've made your bed, now lie on it. People were reading I could walk, I could eat. The wheelchair was an unnecessary prop, the feeding tube a mirage. While it would have been safe to assume all my other ailments were fake, it would have been dangerous not to treat me for them, at least until they could confirm what was real and what wasn't. In order to do that, once I got to Greene County Jail, I was placed under surveillance. Of course, I didn't know this at the time. Nothing was explained. I was cuffed and shackled and at the mercy of the people who towed me around. What meds did I really need? What diseases did I really have? What symptoms or withdrawals was I exhibiting? Without access to a designated medical watch where doctors could run tests or observe me or analyze my medical records, authorities were left to put me on suicide watch. It took me about 7 seconds to learn that sending a dejected person to such a place only puts them closer to the brink, not the other way around. County jail is a despicable place. It was dirty and crowded. The food was expired and toxic, and the people were ruthless no matter what tier they were on. Tier 1 was for holding prisoners charged with lesser crimes like drug offenses and prostitution. The women there shared an open bay pod, a dormitory style area with several bunk beds, a communal area, and shared facilities. People charged with more heinous and violent crimes like murder were housed on Tier 2. That's where they put me. All the inmates at county have not yet had their day in court. Idle, they await their feet. Boredom plus lockup is not a good combination. I'd wait more than a year to see a judge and receive my sentence. Until then, I learned quickly how to protect myself from the horrors of living among hopeless and desperate criminals, many of whom were repeat offenders. Many had not much to lose. Maybe whoever was calling the shots thought I'd be safer in a segregated suicide watch. Ah, it kicked me off. It kicked me off of TikTok. That's crazy. Okay. Nothing I can do. Nothing I can do. Okay. Hey girl, were you just on TikTok? I got reported. I guess for talking about suicide, I probably should have worded that a little bit differently. Um, hold on. Let me see. When are they gonna let me go back? December 24th. Oh my God. I can't I can't go back live until the 24th. That's literally how many days is that? 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. A week. A week? Okay, let me try to appeal it. That's crazy. Okay. That's fine. I'll let everybody know and they can come over here. Yeah, apparently I'm not the only person who's been getting reported. If she or anyone in her team hears that people are reading the book on the live, they're reporting. But because I mentioned the suicide watch without thinking about changing the verbiage. I understand. I did appeal it, but there wasn't like a space for me to write in that I was reading a book. So I don't know. I don't know what will happen. Yeah, TikTok can sense the words that I'm saying, but it should have known that I was reading, that I wasn't actually like talking about doing that. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's read their Miranda rights, even when you get arrested for a petty crime. Okay, where was I at? Maybe whoever was calling the shots thought I'd be safer in a segregated watch because I'd be separated from the rest of the population who may had heard about my case and might harass me, or maybe it was to protect me from violence. I had gone from living a sheltered, isolated life to living with wolves that showed their teeth to assert their power, to feel their boredom, and to stay alive themselves. I was sent to the segregated cell block without explanation. I thought they were trying to torture me, to teach me a lesson. I kept thinking about the two men in the van to St. Paul. Maybe this was a prequel to Death Row. I do have to say that really quick that I'm not sure if she's being honest about being in a van with a couple of men driving to St. Paul, because most of the time they separate men and women regardless. So, like, if I got arrested with, say, my husband or boyfriend, they would not even put us in the same cop car to take us to the same jail. I would be in one cop car and he would be in another cop car. So, if you're riding in another state, I still feel like they would separate men and women in the same way that they separate men and women in the actual jail. Yes, I did, Melissa. Barefoot, I was forced to wear a dark green smock with nothing underneath. If I got my period, they give me if I got my period, they give out special underwear, not much different than pull-ups my mother put me in. That's not true. They don't give you like period underwear. They give you pads in jail. Not pull-ups. Sorry. You're seeing ads? That's weird. You shouldn't be seeing ads. They delivered me to a concrete and brick cell about 6 by 6 with one toilet and two naked ladies. At the time, I didn't know why they weren't wearing smocks. Soon enough, I'd figure out the smocks could be used as nooses. SUICIDE watch doubled as a psych ward. Did they think I was mentally unstable? I wasn't showing signs of a breakdown, but maybe to them that was a telltale sign of psychosis. Maybe I wasn't reacting because I had lost contact with reality. Was I taking it too well, adjusting better than they thought I should? Upon my arrest and transport, I'd exhibited no freaking out or attempts to hurt myself or others. Was I somehow carrying my dad's steadfastness with me? Or maybe it was just shock or denial. Probably all of it, possibly none of it. Regardless, they must have thought I was crazy because my roommates certainly were not exactly sane. On the second day in the cell, one of the naked ladies heard the guards coming and said, "Oh, yay, time for our daily graping." A daily graping. As I trembled and held myself in a ball, the naked ladies cackled. The more I cried, the more snot that bubbled from my nostrils, the more they laughed like a pair of wicked hyenas. They were speaking prison language. Graping meant it was time for the guards to do their daily search of our cell. I don't know what the guards thought we could have gotten our hands on. We sat there with nothing to do. We weren't allowed to go to the canteen or to commissary. We couldn't have a razor to shave. I've been to jail, and I've been to jail on SUICIDE watch, and you're not naked. That's like they're not allowed to do that. You're not naked. You have the ads too. That's so weird, you guys. Okay. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Thank you for letting me know. We couldn't have a razor to shave. We didn't even have a mattress to sleep on. Now that's true. They don't give you a mattress. I don't pay for mine either. But I didn't know that the lives would have ads. We had to eat our delivered meals with cardboard spoons and forks. No, they give you plastic. It's plastic, not cardboard. How would you eat off of a cardboard spoon or fork? She's such a liar. Not that I wanted to eat much. You can't spit away the taste of cardboard from your mouth. With each daily cell search, the guards seemed like they hoped they'd find something off limits or in prison talk contraband. I felt violated and subhuman. And on top of being demoralized, nobody explained to me why I was being treated as a deplorable. With every search, I wondered, how do they think we can manage to get ourselves a razor, a fork, and a tampon from outside? I had a lot to learn about prison life. Roommates came and went. I never knew what the next naked lady would do. She is unhinged because that that's just not true. That's just not true. You're not naked. You're not. You get to keep your smock, but they take your bra and your panties. But you get to keep your smock. Would this one be like the naked lady who howled at the moon all night, even though we only had two slivers in the wall they called windows? Would this be one like the naked lady who had detailed and intense conversation with the wall? Or would this be one like the naked lady who hit her head and mumble to herself in cuss words. Oh, how I wish I had all three back again, because this one liked to play with her own poop. Let me back up and explain that when you are under this type of watch, you don't leave the cell. That's true, you don't. There isn't even an hour of rec time in the yard. We were only allowed one 10-minute phone call a day and one shower. So, pretty much all day long, I was forced to watch my naked roommate delight in her excrement as if it were Play Doh. When you're on SUICIDE watch, you're not in a room with somebody else. You're alone. You don't share a cell when you're on that type of watch. So that's bullshit. Maybe she might have seen something whenever she passed by the ward of that type of watch, but you're not in the same room with other people because they assume that you are dangerous. So they don't want you interacting with other inmates in case y'all come up with a plot to take down the guards or some shit. So that's not true. I mean, this girl will just lie about everything, but I already know that. Like, I know that she will literally lie about everything. So if you're coming over from TikTok, thank you so much. TikTok banned me for saying SUICIDE. Apparently, they thought that I was saying I was going to harm myself. So I am banned for an entire week, you guys, an entire week. Like, that shit is crazy. Hit the like button. Yes, please hit the like button. Make sure you're hitting the hearts so that YouTube knows it's a good one. So, sometimes she'd leave her feces in the toilet and poke at it like it was a bobblehead. One time I had to bribe her to stop, promising I don't remember what, because the stench made me hurl. She didn't shower and her skin folded, trapping sweat and bacteria in her own shit. I'm not telling you this to make you sick. I'm telling you this because I noticed she was being heavily medicated and the whole scene, upon reflection, was unjust. Some of the people were so far gone, it was hard to believe they were cognizant enough to commit any crime. Were they just being pulled from the streets and housed at the jail? This roommate's meds would make her sleep a lot, waking only for meals, which she'd gorge herself on, and have several bowel movements. Playing with them seemed to bring her joy. I was horrified, confused, and trapped like this for 4 months. For a few days, I wondered if I should put my smock to use. See? Did you just hear what I said? Earlier in the chapter, she said that they were naked and that they took the smocks because they could use them as a noose. And now she's saying that she actually had one. So which was it? Did you have one or did you not have one? Because it can't be both. After a few days, I wondered if I should put my smock to use. I looked closely on the walls, around the bunk beds, on the ceiling for high enough places I could tie it to. My dad and Christy came to visit me about a week after I had been extradited from Wisconsin. They, along with Aunt Celeste and Grandma Sharon, came from New Orleans to Springfield to see me for the first time in years. I was so nervous when I was being escorted to the visiting room where I saw 4 unfamiliar faces behind glass. I didn't remember the last time I saw any of them, and as I walked towards them in handcuffs, they looked at me quizzically as if to say, "Who is this girl?" I remember similarly thinking, I don't know these people, but I need people right now. I need support. My ability to walk was the elephant in the room. I felt shy about letting them see me walk, ashamed as if each step represented a lie I told at their expense. It did. It was a lie you told at everyone's expense. Happy that I was walking and healthy, sad because I didn't feel I could go to them for help. There was so much for all of us to unpack and process. We didn't understand almost 100% of what Mike, my attorney, reported to us. It was too fantastic to reason. As Mike uncovered medical lie after medical lie, the discovery process threw us into cognitive dissonance. Each reveal fired at us like machine gun rounds, facts that shot at the heart. Grandma Sharon spoke first. How are you doing in there? There's no way I was going to tell them about SUICIDE watch or the naked ladies or how shitty I feel from not having my pain meds. I'm okay, you know. Good, great, yeah, fine, swell, traffic. The small talk was killing me. I had a limited time and I needed to know what happened to Mama. Did she have a funeral? Did you go? The audacity to ask if her mother had a funeral and if anybody went. Like, you unalived your mother. Are you for real? My dad sat there, his face full of dread. Christy pulled her shoulders back and said, there was no money for a funeral. Dee Dee was cremated. To save the ashes from being discarded, Mama's sister, Aunt Claudia, had paid for the ashes to be sent to her. I hated me. I had taken life from my mother, and now I had taken her wish for death. I thought about the smock. As much as I thought about unaliving myself, I had the chance at county to be baptized for the seventh time in my life. My mother experimented with different churches and Christian dominations so much. We were baptized a lot. Each time felt like a hopeful renewing and cleansing. So I don't mind the redundancy. But after the whole thing went down with Dan, I'd become angry at God for leaving me with her, for not showing me the way out. I'd ask God in church and before bed and in my head over and over, God, make this tormenting hell stop. Please help. Nothing ever changed. I prayed to him at doctor's appointments, before procedures, when Mama put a spell on me. 2 weeks before the schmurder, I prayed to him again. Please don't let her make me get that surgery. Don't let them take my voice. No one ever came. With each prayer, things only seemed to get worse, so I gave up on God. At county, after hearing about my mother's cremation, my soul turned to ash. I felt so dirty, so unclean. I craved holy water to absorb into my skin and absolve me from my sin. Finally, around Halloween time, I was clear to join the general prison population, again without any explanation. To this day, I can only speculate that the people in charge didn't see any symptoms of disease. I had been, however, having debilitating withdrawal from the oxy. Could that have been what they were doing? Detoxing me? No, they don't give a fuck about you and your detox. They're not going to separate you to go through detox by yourself. They don't care. Yeah, she's constantly lying and making shit up. Like, this doesn't even, none of this even sounds like anything that I've ever seen in county jail. Coming off drugs cold turkey is not for the faint of heart, but if you are reading this and have an addiction, I plead with you to get help because it can be done. The suffering of withdrawal is worth the life you will get back. Did they observe me as I went through stomach cramps and flu like symptoms? That's all she says about her debilitating withdrawal symptoms, is that it was flu like. No other descriptive information about what you went through, just it felt like the flu. What does the flu feel like? What does it feel like? Give me some descriptions. What does it feel like? Tell me. What did you experience? In just a smock, the cold shakes, The simultaneous vomiting and diarrhea were incessant. Sure. I had nothing to alleviate my severe discomfort. Did they not see I needed a blanket? Abandoned and without information, this was my low point for me, as I wasn't quite processing my crime and arrest. My mind just went to my mother and back to the smock. I wonder who she got that story from. The cold shakes and the vomiting and diarrhea. That's pretty basic information. I mean, you can Google what does withdrawal symptom feel like, and exactly from Google. This is very generic, not very descriptive, because there's more to withdrawal than cold shakes, and not everybody gets vomiting and diarrhea. Some people actually can't shit at all. So, where was I at? There were people I missed, like Aunt Rachel, one of my mother's only true friends. We met Rachel Miller around 2007. She worked at the American Cancer Society Hope Lodge in Kansas City, where Mama and I would stay whenever I would have hospital appointments. Why didn't she call Aunt Rachel? Aunt Rachel was in Missouri. So why didn't you call Aunt Rachel? Aunt Rachel and her family would come and visit us. We rarely had visitors, so I remember those moments vividly. They were happy times. I remember one year Aunt Rachel and her husband planned an Easter egg hunt for her kids and me. It was one of the very few holidays I had celebrated with other people. Mama trusted Aunt Rachel so much. I believe she wanted to give her power of attorney upon her death. So Rachel would be able to take care of me when Mama was gone. Mama trusted no one with me, so Rachel Miller is something special. I spent a lot of time wondering, did you hear that? Mama trusted nobody, but trusted Rachel Miller. So if she trusted this lady, then why didn't Gypsy trust her to tell her anything if she was, in fact, going through this horrendous abuse at the hands of her own mother? This would have been the perfect person to tell. I spent a lot of time wondering about our friends and family, sick with worry about what they thought about me. Once what they thought about me. She's concerned with what they thought about her. Once I joined general population, I and was allowed a pen. My first letter was to Aunt Rachel. 2 days after I mailed it, I received a letter back from the jail saying that I had confessed to the crime of murder. I remembered writing one line to Aunt Rachel that simply stated, "Yes, I have a part in this, but my part is small." Constantly trying to minimize what she did as if she didn't plan the entire thing. And that was it. That one sentence in a 2-page letter someone in the mailroom had read. The letter would be forwarded to the court as soon as I could. I called Mike. I think I messed up. They're taking it as a confession. Just like my dad, Mike was cool. Calm down, he said. I'll look at it and we'll get through this. I wanted to trust him, just like I wanted to trust my dad. But the one person I had put all my trust in had lied to me and had used me my whole life. If my own mother could hurt me and not have my back, Why would Mike or my dad be any different? At first, I didn't believe Mike was trying to help me, especially when he questioned me about things I just couldn't understand or was hearing for the first time. Like that I didn't have leukemia or anemia or any of the other illnesses that had defined me and confined me. One of the other inmates at county saw how much I was struggling with the truth, with my guilt, and with my loneliness, and she told me I could trust her with my feelings. It felt so damn good to just let every emotion pour out of me. At the time, waiting for trial, I was still desperately holding on to my love for Nick. Missing my mother and scared to be alone with so many strangers, the shame and guilt were like two lumps in my throat, making it so hard to talk through what I had done. And this inmate was sharing so much of her story with me, telling me she understood what I was going through. Her being vulnerable with me helped me see she was a trustworthy friend. So the ease with which I cried it out with this inmate was a lesson in why we need other people in our lives. You just can't struggle or succeed alone. We are wired not to. My wiring had been haywire for so long, so I decided she was bonding with me and it was safe to form a trust. And then that inmate went to her public defender and told him everything I told her in confidence. I remember Mike coming to see me and telling me that the inmate I'd opened up to was trying to trade my secrets, which didn't have much to do with the crime, for a plea deal. She used me for her own benefit. I had made myself a target of manipulation again. Yeah, just another annoying ad. The holy water. I wonder why it's doing that. Nobody else has said anything about the ads. I'm so sorry about that, you all. I can't go back live on TikTok until the 24th. Maybe I can try to appeal it again so we can all watch on TikTok without the ads because TikTok doesn't do ads. So the holy water was just a stopgap. After I learned about my mother's cremation, I began to have nightmares as my subconscious processed what actually happened. One reoccurring dream one reoccurring dream was Mike, my dad, Christy, and I rummaging through Mama's hoarding in order to clean out the house. Mike finds Mama's baby pillow and hands it to me, dripping with her blood. The nightmares consume me, and I wished for Oxy to take me away. During the day, I was living in a detached dream state. I cried at night often, telling other inmates I missed my mom. Some would suck their teeth or act baffled, but most of them gave me a listening ear and a shoulder to cry on, until that one inmate snitched on me to her lawyer. I remember thinking, this is what having a friend must feel like. In that way, I preferred jail to the isolation I felt on volunteer way. In our next meeting, Mike warned me not to talk to anyone anymore. I was more alone than I had ever been, potentially digging a deeper hole for myself as we waited trial. I needed something bigger than myself to call upon, and so for the first time in a very long time, I made praying a part of my daily life. My prayer sounded more like a desperate begging. Please, God, help me. I'm so scared, God. I don't know what to do. I don't know what is happening. Why is this happening? Please, God, I'm so sorry. Please send me a blessing. Yeah, that sounds like begging, not a prayer. Giving testimony during my deposition is when I heard how Nick so violently cut my mother. My dad and Christy tried to protect me as much as possible from the details. They trickled information to me so I could handle it over time. It was already enough to learn that my mother had Munchausen by proxy and that my dad had not been a deadbeat after all. Allegedly, allegedly, because your mother was not ever diagnosed with Munchausen by proxy while she was alive, and you cannot diagnose someone after their death. And her father was, in fact, a deadbeat. He literally allowed Dee Dee to move states away and didn't see her at all. That to me sounds like a deadbeat. Like, if you want to see your kid, you are going to do whatever you have to do. You are going to move mountains to make sure that you have a relationship with your child if that's what you truly want. I think that Christy was trying to keep Gypsy and Rod away from one another because um Christy was obviously worried about him having a relationship with their own kids. And because he's only home 1 week out of the month, how can you possibly spend time with Gypsy in Missouri when you have your kids here? We need you here, not in Missouri. So she was definitely, yeah, Rod does not give a shit. Neither does Christy. They're only in it for the money. They don't care what it looks like. They only care about the money. Uh, could live through seeing the photos. I still haven't seen them, but I'd imagine visuals from the prosecution's cross examination. So you didn't ask Nick to cut the back of her neck so deep it was down to the bone or stab her 17 times? By the time the 1 year anniversary of my mother's death came around, I was still lingering in the overcrowded jail. I found it impossible to navigate my emotions, mostly because I didn't understand them. Being shielded from the gradual process of growing up and maturing, I was now experiencing a crash course in coping. You can't tell days from weeks in jail. Sleep folds into wakefulness. What you dream becomes shadows that you walk beside throughout the day. The first 6 months at county were an emotional overload. Death, discovery, defense. That was only the beginning. In October 2015, after I was released from SUICIDE watch, I had my feeding tube removed by a disinterested robotic county surgeon. When he popped it out, I was stunned at how easily I went on with my life. My mother had told me if it were ever to be removed, I'd die. Come on, it's a feeding tube. It doesn't have anything to do with life or death. I had already gained about 10 pounds, which, according to Mike, was an indication of how malnourished I was. I want to point out that as a person who was 4'11", 95 to 100 pounds is not malnourished. That's actually that's actually pretty normal weight. So her gaining 10 pounds, yeah, she probably looked a little bit healthier, but 95 pounds to 100 at 4'11" is absolutely perfectly normal. There is nothing abnormal with that weight. That's not being malnourished. Now, if she was 4'11" and 60 pounds, yeah, definitely malnourished, but not at 95 to 100 pounds. That's literally normal weight range for that weight and height. I hated that damn feeding tube. It represented her absolute control over me. However, the gaping hole left behind became smaller and smaller. The healing process had begun. I constantly grazed my hand over the bandage and then the scar, like you do stitches or a new piercing. I could hear my mother's voice. Stop fussing with it. Physically, my body was growing into itself, playing catch up. I was morphing into the person that my DNA had intended. I learned my hair was brown, like I imagined, and wavy as it began to grow in. As I put on weight, my breasts and butt rounded out. My leg muscles got stronger simply from the short walks I take to the canteen. She was such a. All she did was walk to the canteen. That's why she was putting on so much weight, because all you did was a walk to the canteen and back. Get your snacks, fat girl. Sorry, I'm not trying to be like body shaming. I just wanted to make a joke. Emotionally, though, I was lost. I still grieved my mother. I missed her. She had been my only companion. I'd beat myself up for having the audacity to think such things. The hypocrisy. But the roller coaster continued as Mike showed me the. Uh, mm, I don't know what that word is. Medical records, and my grief would turn to anger and righteous indignation. Every day brought a different emotion until the first anniversary of my mother's death came around and knocked me over like a sneaky undertow. I was flattened out by the thought of what I had been doing and with whom just 1 year prior. All I wanted to do was escape. Escape the opioids my cellmate had access to. That's exactly what I did as I awaited for trial. And then, in July 2016, God answered my prayers and sent me the blessing I had asked for. County Prosecutor Dan Patterson announced he would not seek the death penalty for me or either Nick, calling the case extraordinary and unusual. Patterson also took into account my abuse, marked by my noticeable malnourishment, and agreed to allow me to plead guilty to a lesser crime of second-degree murder. Because of the plea deal, I didn't have to stand trial. The judge sentenced me to prison for 10 years, eligible for parole in 2023. I didn't know it yet, but the next decade would help me get my life back. Qui na avance pas recul. I don't speak French. I should probably learn. Who does not move forward recedes. Compared to Greene County Jail, Chillicothe felt like a playground. Chillicothe wasn't overcrowded and filthy, and I was no longer alone. I lived in a pod that looked more like a dormitory, so I'm told, with a key to a door and roommates. At Chillicothe, it was actually the first time I could explore. I was freer in prison than I ever had been in my entire life living with my mother. I found myself frolicking in nature more than I ever could in a wheelchair, watching butterflies and slugs on Volunteer Way. A patch of grass on the side of a concrete courtyard opened my imagination. I was Fraulein Maria twirling on a hill. I was a Southern belle picking dandelions and fighting off Civil War suitors. I was Snow White yodeling at the forest creatures. I thought about my mother a lot, reflecting on the first few happy memories from my early childhood. Outside in my prison playground, I'd remember Frosty the Mardi Gras snowman and the arts and crafts we do. I'd still have frequent nightmares. One recurring nightmare I began to have was of me being asleep, lying on my back in my bunk in the dark, and I'd feel something on my chest. In the nightmare, I woke up to a dark figure tearing open my chest and eating my heart. When I woke up from the nightmare, I was in the same position I had been in the dream. I'd feel paralyzed and frightened with the lights off. When I'd close my eyes, the scene from the nightmare reappeared in my awake state. The demon was there. When I'd open my eyes, it would disappear. I don't believe this girl has any nightmares. I honestly don't think that she has emotions. Um, like, I don't think that she's able to feel remorse. I don't think that she's able to understand what guilt is. I don't think that she understands what empathy is. I don't think that she knows how to care, because remember, in one of the letters that she wrote to Nick, she even said her caring was off, because I guess she was trying to admit to him that she didn't know how to care for somebody, but she wanted him to believe that he loved her. So it was kind of like a backwards admission, saying that her caring was off. I don't know. She doesn't have a soul. She is like, have you ever noticed like people who have dead eyes, where you like look at them and there's like nothing behind the eyes, like they almost look like they're walking demons, you know what I mean? That's what that's the vibe that I get from her, like a walking demon, like she's alive, she's here on earth, and she's in her own consciousness, but there's nothing behind the physical. I hope that didn't sound mean. I'm just being honest. I don't think she has a soul. I don't think she understands how to care for people, how to love anyone. Um I don't even think she understands how to love herself. Life at Chillicothe had its ups and downs, points of progress and regression. I had gotten clean while at county, progress, but then the roommate I had in 2018 was still in her addiction, and upon getting her fix of Suboxone, a medication ironically intended to treat opioid addiction, and shared it with me, and I relapsed. Um You can't get addicted to Suboxone. It doesn't work that way. Suboxone, yes, it is a medication to help you withdraw from opioids with like in a safer way. But you can't get addicted to it because it's non-addictive. Your body can get addicted to it, but like your brain, it's not like opiates. It's a little bit different. I think that she's a sociopath. I think she's a sociopath. Yeah, it's to help with cravings. I take Suboxone. I've been on Suboxone for years. I've been trying to come off of Suboxone, but I've been on it for years. And I don't feel addicted to it, like mentally addicted. I do feel like if I just quit cold turkey, that I definitely have a physical withdrawal. There's definitely a pipeline in prison that makes it easy to figure out who has access to rugs. Some women get them smuggled in. Sometimes guards delivered them. Other times visitors pass them off to an inmate. All I'd have to say was, I have money, and the dealer would find me and supply me with Suboxone. Buying and selling rugs in prison was risky, as you can get tossed in the hole, which is prison talk for segregation, which is PC talk for solitary confinement. They wrote that twice. That's how little they spent actually editing this book, that they literally wrote the same thing two times in a row. But when you're addicted, there are no limits to what you'll do to score. Despite my addiction and shame, prison life was still an open field of eye opening experiences. Wherever I turned, I heard and saw things I never imagined existed. I took up smoking cigarettes and heard so much profanity and horror stories of other women's lives. I saw sex in open places. Have you ever had a woman go down on you? One horny woman asked. I've never had anything like that from anyone, was basically my answer in between nervous giggles. Really? Want to try? Then she told me if I let her, she'd give me her servings of biscuits and gravy. Stop for a second. So she's saying that the girl went up to her and was like, if you let me go down on you, I'm going to give you my biscuits and gravy. It's not usually like that. No, that's not how things work. Like, it would have been Gypsy giving her the biscuits and gravy for her to go down on Gypsy. That's how that exchange would have looked. Not, I'm going to give you my biscuits and gravy so you'll let me do something to you. I don't think so. I don't believe that. I think that that's absolutely absurd. And like, if she honestly thinks that people really believe that this happened, I question all the time how stupid she thinks people are. Um then she says something like this, and it makes me realize that thinks people are really fucking stupid. She does. She thinks people are dumb as hell. I was no longer in contact with Nick, but once in a while, Mike would update me on the details of his trial and the seriousness of his possible sentencing. Nick ultimately received life without parole plus 25 years for armed criminal action. Hearing this made me feel similar to when I heard about my mother's cremation. I didn't love Nick anymore, but I knew the reason he was in this situation was partly because of how he felt about me. No, it was all because of how he felt about you. All of it. He would have never done anything like that if it was not for Gypsy Rose Blanchard. One of the many positive things about my time in Chillicothe is a mandatory class I took in 2018. The class was called Impact of Crime on Victims class. The purpose of the class is to raise awareness of the far-reaching consequences of your crime and how your actions impacted the victims. She says that this class was so powerful, but if that were true, she wouldn't be out here manipulating people even now. The class was extremely powerful because it was an environment where I could begin to learn to process my past, take accountability for my crime, and understand that my mother was not the only victim of my horrible decision. One of our very first assignments was to write a letter to the person we committed the crime against. While writing it, I remembered all the people in our lives, my mother's siblings, our neighbors who loved and cared for us, and Nick. All people who were either by blood or by choice taken in by my mother's con act that hurt so many. I hadn't thought of Nick as a victim before taking this class. While he made the conscious choice to unalive my mother and do so violently, he did lose his freedom and therefore his life because I was a catalyst. The letter I wrote to my mother gave me a peace that no holy water ever could. I have found my voice and used it to offer my heart and soul to her family. I trusted God would deliver her the message and she would forgive me for what I had done. Let's listen to the letter she wrote to her mother. Mother, I am now 28 years old and in prison for my part in your unaliving. And although I can never justify my crime, nor can any letter or apology give back the life that was taken, I am writing this as if you were physically in front of me to express all that I have held in the whole of my life. I am writing this letter having had nearly 5 years to feel the emotions when expressed the words written. Every day since your death, I've had nothing but time to reflect on the choices that have led me to where I am today. Moreover, of how your own actions formed the circumstances around mine. The woman writing this letter to you is far different than the girl who was once broken and desperate to live what I would later come to understand as just an average life for a young woman. Living 3 years of my life with you as my only guardian, the one person who had the responsibility of shaping who I would grow up to become. Unfortunately, my upbringing was a far cry from that which it should have been. This is supposed to be a letter that she's writing to her mom, and it sounds like she's blaming her mom. Like, yes, it started out like she was going to actually take some sort of accountability, but she's not. She's not taking accountability. Starting from my birth, going into my young adult, being isolated from having any other human interaction other than with you was lonely and has affected my ability to have appropriate social skills necessary to make healthy social interaction with others. The many unnecessary medical, surgical procedures and medications that were forced on me to treat illnesses that I did not have left my body marked with scars, both physical and emotional. Your choice not to have me educated growing up has made it difficult to gain the appropriate level of education needed for a woman my age, and has caused a depleted self esteem and my ability to make achievements in society. When mentioning the overall lack of experience that was withheld from me by your choice as my mother, you not only took away the normal experiences shape an individual to be who they are or could be, but you have made the choice to keep me from the best things in life that make life worth living as a youth. The innocent joy of having a first day of school. Didn't she have a first day of school all the way up until kindergarten? The fun of going to the mall with friends and buying a dress that was surely never past your approval. The excitement of being asked to prom. The comfort of your embrace when getting my heart broken for the first time. The nerves of awaiting that college acceptance letter. These are all things that I was not able to experience. It would be many years before I was fully able to understand the reasons why I grew up being isolated from others, being taken to hospital after hospital, doctor after doctor, without anything being medically wrong with me, waiting for the next time your hand was to strike me for simply trying to make a friend. Fear, manipulation, and isolation were all I knew of your kind of love, and the lingering question of why I was unable to be allowed the one thing that everyone else seemed to have, the ability of free will. Mom, after all that has happened, I have been searching for answers and spending my time trying to learn about myself as a person, trying to make sense of why all these events unfolded with the amount of tragedy. I want you to know that I now understand that you were mentally and emotionally unstable when you were raising me, and that your actions were the result of a disorder called Munchausen by proxy, which again, she cannot be diagnosed after her passing, and she was never diagnosed during her life. That creates abuse inflicted on a child due to mental illness of the parent. With now having the answers I sought to find, I am able to finally let go of the resentment I held against you and forgive you. And moreover, I want to let you know that I'm sorry for my part in your death. Basically, I'm sorry that you made me unalive you. That's what I'm hearing. I want to let you know that I'm sorry for having a part in your unaliving. Murder was never the answer or solution. There is not a single day that you go by unremembered, and I will carry this regret and remorse for the rest of my life. I will always love you for bringing me into this world and will remember you with love for the woman I know was the good person behind the mental disorder. Going forward, I will take my past and turn it from pain into perseverance, advocating for children who have suffered abuse at the hands of a parent, sharing my story with others to spread awareness of what Munchausen by proxy is and the ways people can recognize the warning signs, in the hopes that I can educate and make the next child who wonders, why is my mommy doing this to me, that much braver to reach out for help. Telling a listening ear before he or she is behind bars for thinking schmurder is the way out. I can never undo the hurt that was caused by my actions, but I hope by doing this, I am remembering you well and making a positive difference with your memory. I love you, Mom. Gypsy Rose Blanchard, 2018, Chillicothe Correctional Center, Missouri. Again, that sounded like, I'm sorry you made me kill you. Fake accountability. I felt this was so helpful that I signed up for multiple 12-week long classes. I received certificates of completion, which still are valuable reminders of my search for understanding. At one point, I was taking 4 classes at one time. It took her 5 years to get a GED, and she was taking 4 classes at one time. It sounds like she's trying to act like she was going to college in prison and she was having 4 classes each semester. No, that's a joke. Learning was so much fun. That's funny. What have you learned since you got out of prison? You haven't taken the time to do any educating on yourself. You haven't learned how to cook. You haven't learned how to clean house. You haven't learned how to iron. Like, if learning is so fun, why aren't you doing anything? I hadn't had the chance to be a formal student. I was even able to facilitate ICVC. I would really like for somebody to come out and confirm or deny if she was actually a teacher for this ICVC class, because I'm going to go with no. And a class called Pathways to Change. For the ICVC class, I needed to be trained to teach, which was really rewarding. This is where I fell in love with the idea of mentoring others. I really want somebody to come out and confirm or deny if that is true. According to the penal system, I didn't qualify for any formal psychotherapy, which was ironic, being that my first stop at Greene County was SUICIDE watch. I was too well for a person who was always told she wasn't ever well. This was surprising to hear. However, I was able to read books on a bunch of issues that definitely affected me: codependency, PTSD, insecurity, abandonment, personality disorders, addiction, trust, and so on. Books were a salvation. Sadly, toward the end of my time at Chillicothe, books were banned. They were being used to traffic drugs into the prison. Knowing how much books help, labeling them contraband seemed like a drastic measure that would render itself ineffective in the long run. Where there's a will, there's a way. One very impactful course I took was on codependency. I read about attachment and learned how and why we form attachments, especially dysfunctional ones. Attachment styles usually begin with the mother. I learned that my attachment to my mother was an insecure one, so I made it my mission to please her on the off chance I could turn some of her other personalities in my favor. My self worth was dictated by what my mother thought of me, how she reacted to my performances, and the big one, whether or not she'd withhold her love. Love was a dangling carrot that made me jump higher to please her even if it meant going against what felt right. My brain had felt like a tossed salad for so long, and now insight and knowledge were available to me if I wanted them. I went on a personal quest to discover who I was without my mother, without being judged by my crime. Where other inmates saw confinement, I saw opportunities to learn independence. I even got a job as a janitor. I mopped the floors of the dining room before and after my 30 minutes lunch break. I Windexed fingerprints off the plexiglass shields on the sides of the payphones, and I removed crumpled balls of tissues from the visitors' room. Sometimes I worked outside in the yard where I disposed of cigarette butts, fresh wads of gum, and general debris blowing around. For some, that might feel confining, but the prison yard was like a playground to me. Aside from having a job, I was responsible for my own space and had to navigate how to live with other people, how to make friends or not. Who am I? What makes me tick? I didn't know anything at all. I didn't even know what size clothing I was because I was always dressed in some costume or boys' clothes. The only times I wore a pair of jeans that that were hand-me-downs were the night I tried to run off with Dan and when I left the house with Nick after the schmurder. Oh goodness, I can't turn the page. I didn't know what shoe size I was until I bought my first pair on the day of release from Chillicothe. You wear booties in jail. That's not true either. You don't wear booties in jail. In prison, you can actually buy like tennis shoes, like actual tennis shoes, like New Balances, Adidas, Nikes. Like you can buy actual shoes, not not booties. Like, is she talking about like socks? That's not true. They have to give you something to protect your feet. So you have to have some sort of shoe. Yeah, everyone is controlling and abusive towards her. Even the fucking prison system is abusive and controlling. They didn't even give her shoes. Come on now. After a lifetime of spending most of my days sitting around watching television, waiting for a doctor's appointment or an errand to run, my routine at Chillicothe initially made me feel busy. As much as I am not a morning person, I liked having somewhere to be, even when somewhere was absolutely nowhere. All that mattered was living out my day with nobody holding my hand. Without my mother's restrictions, my days felt fuller and freer. The one thing that was similar to the life I lived with my mother was living by a schedule, except my mother's schedule was set by a timer for medication dosages. But in a way, that familiarity helped with the transition. 7:30 was count time. We sat up in our bunks and turned the lights on. COs accounted for all the inmates. This took about 15 to 20 minutes, after which I went back to sleep. Okay, so I thought you were just saying that you liked having somewhere to be in the morning, but you got up at 7:30 and then went right back to bed. So where where were you supposed to be? In your bed asleep? 10:30, got up from my top bunk, clicked on my TV, made a cup of instant coffee. With my coffee in hand, I headed to the day room. Sometimes I'd make phone calls, but they were really short before I earned time and privileges. That sentence is so contradictory in itself. So you'd make phone calls, but they were short because you didn't earn time and privileges. That's not how it works in prison. You don't earn time on the phone. Anybody who has money on their books can use the phone. It's not, oh, you weren't good today, so you can't use the phone. It's not like that. You literally, as long as you have money on the books and are in line to use the phone, you can use the phone. And it doesn't matter. Like, I think the jail phone system gives everyone 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So after your 15 minutes, you do have to hang up and call back. But it's not like you're only allowed 1 minute per day until you build yourself up to 15 minutes. That's not true. Then I'd go back to my room, look at my locker, pick from my canteen items, make mac and cheese or some other processed packaged food like ramen noodles, and go back to the day room. 1:30 to 3, we'd have recreation time. I like to work out on the elliptical machine for about an hour. I'm sorry, her body didn't look like she was doing any working out in prison, so I think that this is a lie. I'd come back to the housing unit, shower, and by the time I was out, it would be around 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock, I went to work. I took out trash, swept, mopped, changed toilet paper rolls, and so on. So she went to work from 3 to 4:30, an hour and a half. That's your work day. 4:30, count time again. We returned to our rooms and sat on our bunks until the CO finished. 5 to 10, free time for phone or using other things like reading or playing games or studying. I was able to get my GED while at Chillicothe. 10 p.m., count time and time for bed. How do you go about figuring out who you are when you spent your life unconsciously playing pretend? Here's another admission. How do you go about figuring out who you are when you spent your entire life playing pretend? She keeps telling us in little small ways that it was a con and that she knew it was a con, that she was acting her entire life. Like everyone else doing life, I had to cycle through a ton of growing phases, trial and error over and over. In many ways, I went through adolescence in prison. And since prison is like a grown up high school, women in their 40s act like they're 16. The environment was perfect. When I got there, I joined a clique and I tried to be one of the mean girls. I took on a new nickname, Jersey, because I acted like my shit don't stink. Like I was a mafia girl in The Sopranos or something. But a girl from the bayou can't imitate in the Meadowlands. Plus, my idea of a mean girl Jersey persona meant I had to make fun of people or act judgy. Like, oh my God, did you see what she was doing in the canteen? It's not nice to make fun of people, and I realized quickly that I wasn't a mean girl. Yeah, right. Then I went through a goth phase and listened to heavy metal and wore black lipstick. That was brief too. Did the tomboy thing, which was only defined by my short hair at the time. I kept trying on different hats and different friend groups to see which one fit, just like any adolescent is expected to do, except I was in my 20s. I tried to experiment with my sexuality too. I was pretty sure I was straight, but I tried anyway. Because of a sexual abuse I had experienced and the way my mother made me feel dirty in my own womanly body, I had a mental block that prevented me from full satisfaction. I thought perhaps if I experimented with women, I would have a better chance of reaching climax. I don't understand why this is supposed to be a memoir and she talks about sex more than most romantic novels talk about sex. I think as a young girl, I was exposed to watching shows like Xena, Warrior Princess. Xena and Gabrielle were lesbians, and I watched it and I didn't understand it. When I was around 16, I thought girls were pretty, and that confused me. So I thought, am I gay? There's a saying in prison, gay for the stay, straight from the gate. So when in Rome, I did kiss a couple of girls and became a pillow princess 4 times. That's when you receive instead of give. Nothing ever happened down there, so I figured I was straight. Wait a second. I did kiss a couple of girls and became a pillow princess 4 times. That's when you receive instead of give. So, how can you say that you received but you didn't give, but then nothing ever happened down there? So, how did you become a pillow princess and receive something if nothing happened? Did y'all are hearing that, right? Like, I'm not crazy. It doesn't make sense at all. I was trying to bloom and grow. Chillicothe was my greenhouse, not exactly a natural habitat, but good enough to get the job done in order to bloom. An old part of myself had to wither away. The guilt and the shame that defined me had to be reconciled. The trial and error of experimenting with my persona and testing my interests helped me chisel away at the old insecure self that I had been, a Frankenstein of my mother's making. The more I learned about what I wanted and needed, the more confident I became in who I was, what I was capable of doing, and the potential I had to go further. The more I learned about self worth and forgiveness of myself and others, the more I began to trust my judgment of people. Trust that I could tell the difference between friends and foes. Growing up friendless, I had no idea what to expect of a friend or how to be one, other than what I learned from actresses like Miley Cyrus and Selena Gomez on Disney Channel shows. I didn't know there were 4 categories or levels of friendship, that acquaintances play a different role than friends, or what an inner circle was, or how to build one. Other than Aunt Rachel, my mother didn't model friendship with me with a group of Golden Girls or besties from high school. What is a true friend? What is a fake friend? I had no idea, but I really wanted one. There's another prison motto: you don't come to prison to make friends. How do you make friends in a friendless environment? You take a chance. When I met Lori and Amelia, I realized what a good friend was. Each of them had been my roommate at one time. Neither befriended me out of fascination with my infamy. It happened organically, a blossoming. Before I met Lori and Amelia, I felt like I was giving so much to my prison relationships, always listening and giving. One day I realized I wasn't getting anything back from these people. Remember what I said about whenever she says that something is happening, it's usually flipped, meaning that I feel like they were giving to her and they weren't getting anything in return. But true friends, I know now, make you a better person. And Lori and Amelia did that and then some. I found my tribe. There is nothing more meaningful then knowing you have found your people. Having a feeling of belonging changes a life. But first, you have to feel. Numbing myself with Suboxone was not the answer. This girl and the Suboxone is going to drive me to bite this skin off of my finger. You don't get numb off of Suboxone. That's not what it does. It's not. That's not the premise of the medication. That's not what it does. Suboxone is there to curb your withdrawal, not to make you high. You don't get all like zonked out on it. That's not how it works. For a million reasons, I needed to stop. The main reason I had turned to painkillers in the first place was to leave my world behind. Now to heal. I needed to be present, not vacant. I was so afraid of the withdrawals. They were brutal back at county. Could I go through them again? Then I hit, as they say, my rock bottom. I lied to Christy and asked her for $50 because I told her I broke the girl's CD player. That was your low point. That was your rock bottom. Girl, if that was your rock bottom, my rock bottom was like 10 feet under compared to that. I had literally buried myself and was praying for somebody to leave like one little small ounce so I could climb myself back up if this was your rock bottom. Shit, $50. She lied. She told her she broke somebody's CD player. The stories I have to tell, if that's rock bottom. I told Christy how sorry I was, that it wasn't right. I hurt that trust. She said, I forgive you. I love you all the same. I just an actual addict will look at this little story and roll their eyes, because the things that an actual addict have done to get money for drugs would blow your fucking mind. Okay? That would blow your mind. Her forgiveness surprised me. It gave me the courage to quit. Cold turkey. This book is borderline like comedic. I told myself that this time around, at least I knew what to expect. Facing my demons had to be done to be sober. Without the numbing, my life was beginning to change. I was beginning to feel like someone worthy of giving love and receiving it, who was even happy. I had found acceptance and love with trusted friends and family. My relationship with Dad and Christy had flourished through constant phone calls, frequent letter writing, and their own in person visits where they'd bring me homemade food and pictures and tell me stories about my early life, memories that were never mine before. For every story my mother had told me about my dad, Christy, and my siblings, Dad had an alternate version. In the beginning, our visits together were like first dates. Again, with the romanticizing the relationship between her dad. Like, that's gross. until I felt comfortable enough to ask Dad and Christy questions about some of the moments of disappointment I remembered. Mike Stanfield was the first one who told me that my father had been sending money and letters and gifts for me all those years. I didn't believe him. It's funny that Mike told her, I'm glad everybody's laughing. I found it hilarious. Um, I find it funny that Mike, her attorney, was the one who diagnosed her mom with Munchausen by proxy. I didn't realize he had a doctor degree as well and was able to do so. And then I also find it interesting that he's the one that told her that her dad was actually not a bum at all. He'd been sending money and letters and all kinds of stuff. I sent you cards for every occasion, Dad said, but she told me you didn't even know when my birthday was. I sent you a laptop. Didn't you get it? Oh, but she told me we got that from charity. Do we think that this actual conversation happened? Um, I wonder, and I'd love to hear if her dad actually did send her a laptop. I left messages on your mama's voicemail wondering about you and wanting to know if she got the money I sent for the operation. But she told me you didn't care about me, that you were all about having a son. And now that you got one, I was dead to you. Do you know how many times I called Dee Dee to try to plan trips with you? Christy said. I even wanted to take you for long holidays. But she told me that you were a bitch and that dad was a deadbeat and you deserved it. Oh no, I'm sorry. She told me that you were a bitch and that dad was beating you and you deserved it. Wow. She always thought we were cheating behind her back, and that wasn't true, Christy said. Dad and Christy wanted me. They loved me. You would think such news would have elated me. Instead, I felt sadder than I ever had, like I was back in the shed, awakening from the dream I had of our own happy life. So here she says, Dad and Christy wanted me. Like, it was a choice that she could go and live with her dad and Christy rather than live with her mom. Of course they're going to tell you that they wanted you. You're 24 and they don't have to raise you. It's not the same thing when you're 12 and 13 years old and your dad has other family to take care of. Like it's not the same thing. Of course they're going to tell you that now. You're in fucking prison and they're not legally responsible to take care of you. I don't know. No, exactly. Nobody wanted her. Her mom was the only one. And they see it now. She is the cash cow. And that's why everybody suddenly wants to have something to do with Gypsy Rose. Yeah. I'll read the last 4 chapters tomorrow. I'll have to do it only on YouTube since I can't go live on TikTok. I might try to see if I can do the time to whoops. If I can do the appeal again. I'll have to figure out how to do it. I don't know. I don't know where I need to go. I'll figure it out later. Her mom was terrified of her, like legitimately scared. It was a very unfair decision, but I did say the word suicide a couple of times. So maybe it triggered the algorithm to just cut me off, thinking that I was like threatening to do something even though I wasn't. So I do understand, and I probably should have used a different word. So I'll have to come up and like think of something if there's more words like that in the next couple of chapters. Like if I have to yes, please smash the like button. If I have to like spell bad words out, I will. Hit the like button. TikTok is very restrictive. It didn't used to be that way. It really didn't used to be that way. I feel like she's got little spies watching creators that she knows are going to be like talking about the book. And because even though I'm kind of I like lay low on the gossip, I do talk about her. I talk about her narcissism. I talk about her behavior patterns and action patterns and things of those natures, but I stay away from most of the drama. But even though I stay away from the drama, she knows that I still talk about her. So I'm sure she had somebody listening in. Oh, because Dreamercraft actually commented on one of my videos and said that if I was reading it on live, that it was a copyright claim and they could sue me. So Dreamercraft knew that I was reading it. And then SMB Express also knew that I was reading it on live because she commented on my post. So both of them knew that I was reading it on live. So I'm sure one of them was in the live just listening, because I don't pay attention to every single name that pops up and comes into the live. I mean, it's hard to do that, especially when I'm reading a book. Like, I'm looking at the book, I'm not looking at the names that are coming in to the live. So I wouldn't have seen if either of them came in. It's all good. Hopefully, I'm able to figure out how to actually go in there and type an appeal, like explain what it was that I was doing and that I was only reading a book, and get, my live back. If not, we'll just meet here tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You guys, I don't think it's considered copyright since I'm not reading the book all the way through without commentary. I think if I was only reading it, that's a good question, Buffy. I'll look at that. But I think since I am reading it and we're having like a discussion, kind of like a book club meeting, I feel like it's a little bit different in that sense. If I was to just like read the book by myself without any commentary. I think if you do it without the commentary, they probably could do a copyright claim against me, but because I'm adding that commentary in, I think it disqualifies it. I know. I saw that. I saw three other creators today reading the book. It's all good. I mean, they can do what they want to do. I'm not going to try to stop them. Of course, it was my idea, and whenever people see a good idea, there are always going to be other people who want to jump on the train. So, it is like a book club. That's what I think. If it keeps people from buying the book, go ahead and read it to others online, because I'm sure there are people who follow me that don't follow other people that enjoy listening to me read, and I'm sure that there are people who follow other creators that don't necessarily care, for my content, and that's perfectly okay. It is the nastiest book club, ain't it? Dirty. I hope I get it approved too, but if not, I'll be back on TikTok on Christmas Eve. Anyways, let me go because I need to get in the shower and wash this dirty dog water, sweat and dog hair all over. I'll be 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So Gypsy Italian girl, that should be 6 p.m. your time. Susie, I think so. I think that that was in the second day I read. All of the lives that I did with the book reading are already posted to my YouTube in sections of 3 chapters each. So if you're interested in watching the replay, you can go head over to my main page and look for the replay. Oh, excuse me. I can imagine, Pat. What did he say? Was he like, "Ugh, that's a book?" And like everybody keeps saying, like she wanted her daughter to read this book. Like I would not let my child read this book. Thank you for coming and hanging out with me. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Have a good night. Hold on, let me figure out how to end.